The designer series continues because we're just trying to find one designer shoe that is actually worth the money. And so far, it's pretty much just been garbage across the board. And it's not that it's like necessarily just garbage footwear, but when you're charging $1,000 plus, you would hope that they're at least up to the standard of quality of most shoes, most high-end sneakers, not even like high-end, I mean like the nicer Nikes. But most of what we've seen is just bottom of the barrel, which is hilarious because it's like these are targeted towards people that have that kind of money to spend. And there's a part of me that loves when I open something up and it's nothing but trash on the inside. So one of the more popular shoes that's really helped fuel the chunky dad shoe trend that actually feels and seems pretty substantial, especially compared to all the rest of the high-end shoes we've done, the Triple S. We're gonna cut these things in half, run through all of our tests to really just figure out, are they worth the money? Are they even close to being worth the money? Are they built up in quality enough to say like at least they're high quality regardless of the price? Or is this just another case of a really terrible high-end designer brand selling absolute garbage to the people that can afford to pay $1,000 plus for garbage? And if you didn't know, Balenciaga has been around for over 100 years. Despite their most recent disgusting marketing campaign, they trace their lineage all the way back to 1917 when Cristobal Balenciaga founds Balenciaga in San Sebastian, Spain, and opens his very first boutique store in Madrid, followed by his second store in Barcelona. But in 1936, due to the Spanish Civil War, he moved to Paris and established his haute couture house, or as my resident French speaker gave me the phonetic spelling, haute couture. And that term haute couture basically just means the expensive fashionable clothing brands that were produced by the leading fashion houses. So then for the next 30 years, we're kind of the golden era of haute couture, with Balenciaga designing many of the notable items like the barrel line jacket, the balloon jacket, sack dress, and designing the Queen of Belgium's wedding dress. But after such a hot streak in 1968, Balenciaga closed his passion fashion house as he was disillusioned by the rise of ready-to-wear fashion, followed by his death in 1972. And unfortunately, he didn't leave anyone behind as a successor to continue his vision. So without any direction, without Balenciaga actually leading the vision, Balenciaga basically just died, and the brand lost its identity and it struggled to compare to the new design houses. And really only the fragrance division continued operating during this dormant period from 1968 to 1986. But in 1986, Jacques Bogart acquired Balenciaga and had plans to revive the brand, but really struggled to regain any relevancy for the next 15 years. But in 2001, Kering, or formerly the Gucci Group, acquired Balenciaga, which gave the brand more resources, more money, more room for expansion. And from 2001 to 2015, Balenciaga grew again under the notable creative director of Nicholas, I don't know, I'm gonna let Sam do that one, and the short stint with Alexander Wang. But in 2015, Dimna Gvasalia, founder of the brand Vetements, took completely over. And he brought a radically new vision to the brand and transformed the brand into one of the most influential and iconic forces in modern fashion. His approach blended luxury and streetwear, irony with subversion, avant-garde design with pop culture references, and under his leadership, Balenciaga has become synonymous with the oversized silhouette, meme-worthy designs, and provocative marketing. Some would say too provocative. And I would say it, actually. And with this new version of Balenciaga in 2017, the Triple S is released. Like we said in the intro, this is one of the first shoes that really put this big chunky dad shoe on the market, and these things are chunky. This became one of the most iconic, sought after, hyped luxury sneakers of the time. And soon after its release, celebrities like Kanye West, Bella Hadid, Travis Scott were seen wearing a pair of Triple S's, and that's really what put these on the map and made them what they are today. One of the most iconic, chunky dad shoes of all time. So what are these shoes? Well, the brand is Balenciaga, the style is the Triple S sneakers. They weigh a really heavy 2 pounds, and they retailed for a really heavy $1,100. And you maybe expect them to be built in Italy or somewhere fancy, right? But they're made in China. And the way they position this product is really nothing at all because it's a high-end luxury sneaker and they don't care to position products because they're not selling to people that care about the product as much. So now, let's start going through every single detail of this, cut it in half, look at everything, and really figure out if this is worth $1,100 or how much it's actually worth. I use Shopify every single day because it's the all-in-one e-commerce platform that makes it easy to start, run, and grow your business, because running a business is such a pain in the butt. That's what we do here. We've got the YouTube channel, we have the collaborations, we've got the handmade leather goods we make right here in the shop, and all of that is done through our Shopify website because of the tools that they actually offer, like Shopify Magic. And this is a new tool that I was actually really impressed with, because one of the biggest challenges for small businesses is getting really good product photography without spending hours and hours shooting and editing and the whole rigmarole that goes along with that. That's why Shopify Magic is really handy, because it's built right into Shopify and it makes product photography ridiculously simple. But that's just one of their tools. They have so many tools, email tools, retargeting tools. They even have like third-party tools. If they don't offer something, someone in the third-party realm does. And they integrate right into Shopify. Whether you're running a full-blown brand or just getting started all by yourself, Shopify gives you all the tools to showcase your product professionally with zero hassle. So try Shopify Magic for yourself at shopify.com/roseanvil or check them out via links in my description. Thanks again to Shopify. So now let's start looking at the material, starting with the upper first. And it looks like there's a good amount of leather on this shoe. There's two different types of mesh. One's a more open, flexible, breathable mesh. One's a little bit tighter mesh. And then as for this leather, it's to really tell if it's real leather, we're gonna have to cut it and burn it because they've done a really smart job of rolling the edge of these panels to hide any cross section. It just makes it look cleaner, it makes it look classier, and it is a more expensive way of doing things. So there's one little point to say like, yeah, it is luxury to some degree because they've rolled that edge. So you gotta give them that for sure. But to see if it's really leather, we burned it and cut through the cross section, and these things just lit up. It just started melting, it started fizzling, and leather does not do that. So these are clearly, all these panels are just fake leather, which for $1,000, you'd hope there's some leather, but at the same time, a lot of these people that can afford this kind of footwear don't like leather. And so I can let it slide a little bit. I'm gonna do a quick double check of the fake leather because it's honestly pretty convincing fake leather if it is fake. Okay, so I can see leather does not light on fire usually. So it is just kind of fizzling out. So that's definitely fake leather. Burn the toe bumper too, that's clearly fake leather. Sam's right, there is no leather in the sneaker. I was doubting Sam. No, that looks like leather though. It's very convincing. Like if we didn't burn these, I might have said that it was leather. At least it's really convincing fake leather. But for over $1,000, you think you'd get some leather in a $1,000 sneaker, even if people are like, oh, I don't like leather, I don't want to hurt animals. So now that we've seen all the panels in the upper, honestly, it's well made. I like the rolled edge, but it's not like you don't see this in other sneakers. You know, you can see similar features and a lot better materials in sneakers that are like $200 and under. But obviously that's not where all the weight comes from. That's not all the sole construction. And a lot of the value and cost and some of that might be in the whole sole construction. Because if you even look at the inside, just a very standard lining, you know, nothing special in there. I pull out the insole, about as cheap of an insole as you can get. It's just a really cheap open cell foam. I really can't believe they threw this in there. You see this in like really cheap Nikes and Adidas. Like this is a cheap insole. The lasting material underneath of it, exact same lasting material you see in sneakers. It's literally the exact same stuff that you see, that we've seen in a bunch of sneakers. It has the same pattern, has the same weave structure to it. It's strobo stitched. So far, the upper and the insole and the lasting technique is like that of a $120 sneaker, tops. Probably even less because it doesn't have leather. We ran the ball drop test, bounced up 12 inches, so honestly not bad results. So there's got to be some amount of like rebounding materials through the midsole and through the sole construction. And so based off that result, if you look at the website, it says it has a double foam midsole. A lot of times, once again, we've seen brands do this. We're like, it's a dual density insole, and it's like a layer of different color foam. And so I'm really curious if it is actually a double layer of foam, if it has any value to it, or if it's all just like a jumbled together mess. So we'll see when we get it cut in half. But from the outside, it looks like there's a layer of foam here, and then maybe a support through the midsole with this black layer, and then a bigger, softer midsole potentially. So it really might be dual density. And when I first saw these on the midsole, I thought it was miscast or mismolded because you got all these like lines and you got these big gaps. And I honestly still don't, I think it's part of the design. I don't think it's an issue with it because up here in the toe, it's not split and separated, but this clearly seems intentional. This kind of seems just cheap. So I'm pretty sure that it was on purpose and it's intentional. But that's kind of the problem with all these designer sneakers is sometimes you don't know if they're just being cheap or if it's a design choice or why they do certain things. And that's why it's so nice when we get them cut in half, because even the outsole, this is a really unique and weird outsole because this is also a two-piece outsole. You've got this harder plate that runs through the entire shoe, big old Balenciaga logo there. And then you've got your softer, but really hard. How hard is this? 90 Shore A. And so it's a really hard rubber attached to a really hard, basically like full length shank. Because if I try to bend this, I can't really bend it. Should we see if we can break it, actually? Maybe that's what we'll do. I'll do it at the end of the video just in case. Let's do it now, actually. Let's see if I can break it with my own hands. Put it up to the mic so you can hear it. I'm not. Oh, I don't think it would break. Let's try this way. Well, that's better than half the Jordans that have like a carbon fiber plate and some of these other TPU plates and stuff because that won't break. So I'm assuming this is a harder TPU plate because it has a little bit of give. It doesn't like lighten up like when you bend a hard plastic. So that is kind of cool, but you also are walking on really, really hard rubber. That's gonna be pretty slick because it's so hard. But I don't really understand why they went with such a hard outsole. Like this is probably the hardest outsole we've seen on a sneaker ever. And so they're just not gonna be comfortable. They're not gonna be grippy, but they're gonna last a long time. And as for functionality of this plate, I assume it's mostly aesthetic, but it does give it some rigidity. It gives it some strength, you know, prevents torsional flex, is what I'm getting at. But it's not like this is a performance shoe. I'm perplexed, ultimately. I don't know what's going on in this. And we did the puncture test on this plate, and it is fairly soft. I thought it was gonna take a lot more pressure to puncture through, but it took 95 pounds to puncture through. And I think that's why so many people love watching us destroy these, because you never really know what's design, what's functionality, what's form, how it all plays together, what they're just being cheap about, what they're actually doubling down on in terms of quality. That's why these are so confusing, and that's why I like doing them. So let's cut these in half and really figure out the truth of what's inside the Triple S's, because as far as I know, no one's ever seen what's inside one of the most iconic dad shoes of all time. So let's cut it in half. All right, we got these things cut in half. Not a cheap one, and somebody on TikTok called us out for, they thought we bought a fake pair of the Geo baskets. We just barely launched that video, and he's got like a 3-minute video trying to prove us wrong. We got a rebuttal for you, because we got receipts, son. I'll just put it here, actually. Here's the receipt. We'll post a rebuttal TikTok. It's good to be checked though. So if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing and support us where you can, because we really do buy these at full price, straight from the source, to make sure that we're actually representing these brands and what they are and what they're not doing. So help us out wherever you can. Why not? Most of the stuff's free, a little click here and there. So now let's see what's inside. At least it's not some terrible columned, unsupported outsole like we saw with the Geo baskets. Those were pretty shocking. I thought the Geo baskets were gonna be more like this on the inside, where you've got the layers of foam that's not gonna overly compress, and your toes are gonna go into the different columns because it's such a thin little piece of fiberboard. And people will say, well, they're not for walking. I'm like, they're shoes. They're like, if you're designing shoes not to be walked in, you're not designing shoes. So how does this one compare? Well, it is truly a dual density midsole. I thought for sure this black layer bisected those two layers, and it was somehow like controlling the squish to make sure it doesn't overly squish, because this is a lot of foam. You know, this is more than what you see in the vast majority of sneakers, obviously. But are the different layers actually different durometers, or is it all just the same? That layer came in at 50 and that one came in at 40. So maybe they are actually dual density. So this top layer is a harder density, and then underneath is a little bit softer foam. And so what that does for you is it gives you more firm platform underneath your foot, so it's not over compressing and losing a little bit of stability, but at the same time you've got a little bit softer foam to absorb that shock of the impact, which you need, because look how thick that TPU plate is. That's like over a 1/4 inch. And with that really hard outsole, like these are very, like that's a hard shoe. That sounds like, compare that noise to like a soft foam sole. They sound the same actually. No, they don't. They sound different to me. Another thing that's surprising is how thick all these layers are. Not that it's necessarily for durability, but like at least they're like built up and really chunky, and the insides somewhat represent what it looks on the outside, what it looks like on the outside. But other than that, it's built like a decent sneaker with some weird features. Is this a game-changing shoe? Is this something you only find in $1,000 plus sneakers? No, this is what you see in a lot of just average sneakers. You know, $150 and under, you're gonna see this all day. And a lot of times those sneakers have a lot better uppers, a lot better insoles, and a lot better components across the board. So is this shoe worth $1,100 that we spent on these just to cut them in half? Not even close. Like, you know, they're better than Geo baskets, but marginally, You know, there's really nothing about this shoe that if you didn't know who Balenciaga was, you didn't know what this shoe was or the hype or why it was built or the cultural significance, if you showed this to your dad, he'd be like, yeah, it's an ugly shoe, first of all. But also like, oh, it just looks like maybe like a $50 Walmart shoe, maybe a $100 pair of Nikes. Like there's nothing visually, materially, functionally that really makes this shoe worth anything more than maybe, we'll say 200. And even like $200 is pretty generous, I feel like. Not worth $1,000, worth less than 200 tops. Are they at least comfortable? Are they built to be a comfortable enough shoe for the style? Yeah, I think they actually would be pretty comfortable. You know, because it doesn't have a huge slope like you see with a lot of Nikes. You do have a lot of soft, squishy foam underneath instead of the big open cell columns that are completely unsupported. And so it's really not a terrible shoe, it's just a terribly priced shoe. There's nothing about this shoe aside from the hype and aside from the brand that makes it worth $1,100. There's no way. There's nothing on the inside of here that points to anything of any value, to be honest. It's just a shoe. And it's made in China. It's not even made at like a really high-end factory. It's just made in China somewhere. And if I bought a pair of these for $1,100 and I found out they're built like a $130, $150 sneaker, I'd be a little upset. To me, the big problem with this whole designer thing is like we talked about in the history, the initial vision of a lot of these brands was like, we don't care about this fast fashion thing. We don't care about making things for everyone. We're trying to make the highest quality, most boundary-pushing designs with a very distinct vision to do something different. And now, 100 plus years later, it's just a cash cow. You're paying the designer price, but you're getting none of the designer attributes. You're just getting an average shoe. So now this is officially the second shoe of our designer series, and we've cut apart the Rick Owens Geo Baskets, the Golden Gooses, the Gucci Aces, the Balenciaga Speed 2, the Balenciaga Crocs, and the Triple S's. How do these compare? Well, comparing them to Geo Baskets, the Geo Baskets have a lot better upper. It's actually leather, and it is a surprisingly good leather for a designer sneaker, but the whole sole construction is garbage. This one, the upper is garbage, and the sole construction's okay. So the way I'd rank them is probably, put the Triple S's first, Rick Owens Geo Baskets, then the Gucci Ace, then Golden Goose, then Balenciaga Speed, and finally the high heel Balenciaga Crocs. And do I think any of those on the list have even got close to being worth the price? No. And we've once again proven that a lot of these designer products are ultimately just fast fashion junk, repositioned with a higher price, with a significant name and some really sketchy marketing to sell garbage to people that don't care that they're buying garbage. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what other designer products you want us to dissect and really find out the truth about, because so far, we've not even got close to finding a shoe that even represents a fraction of what a designer shoe really should be. If you didn't push that subscribe button, consider pushing it. Check out our handmade leather goods, because that's how we can afford to buy $1,100 products and have the receipts to back it up. So thank you guys. See ya. But in 2015, Dimna gives Izalia, what the Dimna give Izalia. I hate these brands for the names alone.